Hey y'all, I'm William Jones, and today we'll be going our resume writing workshop. Over the course of this presentation, we're going to cover a variety of subjects from what makes a good resume and to, most importantly, how to structure your resume. That will include many different elements, and we'll kind of dive right into that. So what makes for an effective resume? Some things that you should keep in mind is that your resume will be read and skimmed for really only 10 seconds. Because of this, you need to try to keep it down to only one page. In addition to this, your resume should be tailored for every single job that you're applying for. So with that said, the resume that you use for a UI/UX role look a little bit different than that for a full stack role, and then different from that for a back end role. And so we'll talk about how to structure that a little bit later on. Your resume doesn't need to include everything that you've done. I want to reiterate that your resume does not need every single job or activity or volunteer experience that you've ever done. That's what your LinkedIn is for. What employers want at the end of the day is to know your personal impact, your problem solving abilities, your leadership, your entrepreneurship skills, and your orientation towards achievement. Talking about when I say orientation towards achievement, I mean what did you accomplish versus just the responsibilities that you had on a daily basis. So without further ado, how to structure the actual layout of your resume. The resume will include multiple sections. These will be the header and contact info, the technical skills, the projects, the experience, and the education. Right here we have a fine example of this resume, or a resume from a full stack grad. As you can see at the very top, you have the name in bold, contact information and address right under that. After that, you have technologies listed, projects following in suit, work experience, education, etc. So within the header and contact info, some things that you should keep in mind is that your name should be prominent and in a larger font than everything else. As far as contact information goes, they really just need your phone number and email address. When it comes to your location, though, it's very easy or very tempting to put your entire address. That's not necessary at all. Your city and state will do just fine. You're not going to be sending any postage at any point during the job application process, so therefore you do not need to actually have your full address. In addition to this, it's important to also include important links such as your GitHub, LinkedIn, personal portfolio site, blogs, Stack Overflow, etc. Of course, have two versions of your resume in general, one with hyperlinks and one with websites written out. Going back to this one, you can see that they have the hyperlinks and the websites written out. So that's very useful. So you can just copy and paste that or click it. Now, here's an example of some good header, or of a good header. You have Maggie. She just New York, New York. We don't need her exact address. We have her phone number, her email address, LinkedIn, GitHub. Three very important things to have included, but also I just want to pay attention to the fact that as soon as we see this, we know exactly who she is. Her name's not going to get lost in the stack because it's larger and a bolder font than everything else. So just kind of going back to that, remember those key components, and we'll come back to this a little bit later. For right now, I want you to pause the video and take some time to actually work on your header yourself, referring back to slides 8 and 9 to craft your very own header. Technical skills. These include the languages, frameworks, software, databases, front-end libraries, APIs, tools, Git, etc. But for these are very important because your employers want to know what skills you possess prior to coming to them. You will classify these by the level of proficiency/relevancy to the job posting. By this, I mean that you'll always want to put the things that you're strongest in, but if you're also equally strong in JavaScript and Python, but you're applying for a back-end role, maybe Python will take precedent over JavaScript in that one instance. So just be mindful about how you correctly try to format or kind of line these up. Always accurately rank your level of proficiency. If you wouldn't be comfortable interviewing in a language, then you likely aren't proficient, and that's what we'll kind of talk about how to delineate that a little bit later. And specifically in this slide, looking at the technical skills here, we have the three components: proficient, knowledgeable, and some experience. From this, I know that the languages that I'm probably going to be able to test this person in are everything at the top. Things that they're knowledgeable in are things that they probably can acclimate or learn up on very easily and prepare within a few weeks for an interview. Some experience or things that they probably are interested in or have maybe had very limited encounters with, but probably not proficient enough to actually test in. So pause the video, take some time to add your skills using slides 11 and 12 as your reference guide. A quick note I want to touch on is when you are adding your actual skills, to avoid using any type of progress bars. These not only look tacky, but they are not accurate measurements or objective measurements of JavaScript. What is 5 out of 5 JavaScript, right? No one knows what that means. And by avoiding these, I mean do not do them at all. They will not serve you any purpose and will harm you in the process. So projects. Why include projects? Not only are they demonstrative, but they help kind of to connect the practicum or the technical theoretical to the practicum experience. So I want to see as an employer, not only what you learn, but how you've applied those things. How to write about those, you'll have the same structure as everything else. You'll use bullet points, powerful verbs. But when you start off, you'll have the project name, role, and then months and year, and then a link to where it's deployed is very, very, very important. If you don't have this, have the GitHub link ready to go. So give some non-technical context, 1 line or 2 lines max about that. Basically an elevator pitch about what to actually put or what your project is actually on. And then talk about what you worked on specifically and talk about your responsibilities and accomplishments and then key technologies used in that specific project. So here's an example of this. So one thing I want to hark on here is that this is a team project, so they put developer, but say you're working on a solo project like Stackathon, then you would put sole developer, and that, that says a lot more because you have a lot more to handle versus just maybe one aspect of a team project. Here also notice that they don't only have the name of the project, they have the role, they have the year, they also have the GitHub link. In addition to that, a quick summary of what the experience was, and then their responsibilities and key technologies used listed underneath that. So definitely refer back to this, and I'm actually going to give you time to pause the video and look back through these past few slides and reflect and make your own projects right under your skills. When it comes to writing about your experience, remember that your resume only needs to be 1 page. So for the purpose of this, you will add everything and have one master resume. But before you actually send out your resume, you'll actually redact it down to the most relevant experiences that you'll want to highlight for that particular job that you're applying for. So you'll include things like work, volunteer internships, side projects, research papers. Make sure, of course, to have the role, the company, the dates active. Dates, by dates I mean month and year. Don't just put years because that is not the most accurate descriptive of time frames. Of course, for recent experience, you want to include these, but nothing more than 10 years. So if you've had 20 plus years in an industry, narrow that down. For the master resume, include everything, but for the final part that you'll also now narrow these down and redact them to 1 page. Chronological order, you want to start from the most recent and work your way backwards. That's very, very important because it's just an easier linear progression for me to follow. Now, so when you're writing about your experiences, some things to think about, especially if it's not a project, to remember that keep it to bullet points, no paragraphs, and always start with a powerful verb. Keep it to about 3 to 5 bullet points max. Each experience should only be 1 to 2 lines, and focus on your accomplishments. This is very, very important. At the end of the day, anyone can write about the responsibilities they have, but I want to know, how did you contribute to the organization or your team specifically during your time at a set company? So definitely try to frame that. We'll talk a little more about that. But for right now, I'm going to give you a few minutes to pause the video and just start writing out your own experiences. Of course, starting with a master resume, and then we'll redact it down to 1 page. So I'm sure you're wondering, how do you measure accomplishments? The thing that you want to think about is quantifying your impact. That focuses on using ranges, frequencies, and scales to accurately or objectively measure your work and showing what you actually accomplished versus just your day-to-day responsibilities. Example of this for range would be supervise 7 to 12 undergrad research students a year. That lets me know exactly how many versus just saying supervise undergrad research students. For frequency, we have the reviewed and evaluated 40 to 50 topical articles per week. This is important because not only do I have a numerical value of how many articles you did, I know the frequency of which you did that. 40 to 50 a week is different than 40 to 50 a day or 40 to 50 a year. So just keep that in mind. And then scale being a company, $200,000, $350,000, $100,000 per year. Again, you kind of see the frequency there, but also having a range that kind of lets me establish how much you actually got done. Saving a company money is very vague and doesn't let me know, but having a set an objective numerical value or range kind of helps me understand the impact that you made. So examples of this in real time, we have a Teach for America, a bullet point for resume. Underneath that, on the first bullet point, you'll see achieved a 19% increase in state test passing rate from 76 to 95% for hundreds of students. They could have easily just said increased state test passing rate, but instead they gave us some numerical values to help us really kind of understand and quantify their impact. So, experience. You want to maximize your technical relevance, include tool development, technical research, stats and modeling, works that you did for a friend's website. These are all important because I want to know everything that you've done relating to being a software engineer prior to actually becoming a software engineer. Also, you want to create a narrative for the reader. So how did you go from your last experience to coding? What led you to tech? Is this clear on your resume? If you didn't have any technical roles, of course, that's fine. That's not exclusively what I'm asking for, but if you can try to connect those dots in some capacities, that makes it easier to kind of see the linear progression to where you are today. So maximize again if you can, kind of going back to what we were talking about quantifying impact, but also talking about the technical aspects. So worked on one of the largest hospitals in New Jersey with 1,733 beds between 2 locations. Again, frequency, range, all those things, numerical values, helps me quantify, but also let's talk about the middle part, transition to departments, daily, weekly, and monthly efficiency reports from being 100% manual to automated with Python scripts, saving an estimated 100 man hours monthly. So kind of going back to the fact that this is a business analyst role in a hospital, we can kind of see some technical elements that kind of help me understand or start connecting the dots for how this person got into software engineering. Also, just at the bottom, let the business case for developing new PS or swinging and coordinating its work with existing operating room, leading it overall through gap increase of 30%. Also kind of going back, we can kind of still see elements of intersectionality and experience, but also some tangible metrics that are very, very important. So what if you don't have a lot of work experience? That's a very valid question. Add any type of experience. The last thing that we want to see on your resume are unnecessary gaps. So, for those right out of college, have you interned, have you volunteered, emphasize your impact, expand on your education section, including papers and research. That's always a great thing so we can know that we were entrenched. But your main focus will be your projects, and that's your experience. And that's totally fine because that's the most relevant thing that many of you will have to being a software engineer. It also will speak volumes and be a very, very recent example of your work thus far. So for education, which will come right under this, you'll list your formal education and technical education, i.e. Full Stack Academy. You'll have 1 to 3 lines per degree. GPA honors scholarships are important. Of course, include relevant coursework. If you took any CS classes, that's very, very awesome and important to include. It's also okay to include partial and complete degree, even graduate degrees. That's totally fine, because if you went to a university setting for any period of time, I'm sure you've learned something, and you can also talk about that. Like if you wrote a research paper or things like that we mentioned earlier, you can expound upon those. So formatting, some things I want to touch on right quick is to make sure that you are very, very consistent with spacing, your verb tenses, past versus the present tense. When in doubt, just always lean towards the past tense. Grammar and punctuation, that is very, very critical. It's one of those things, very nuanced, but kind of shows me that you're able to pay clear attention to instructions and have some kind of detail orientation. Also be consistent in your font choice and font size, and then the spelling of technology and frameworks are very important because those things can change so easily. And then personal summary / interest statements. If you have the space, you may include these. Fits better at the bottom of your resume. Please don't put this at the top. Could be a great way of kind of like generating the whole holistic experience of who you are as a person and showing us how you might fit into an office culture. But again, do not add if you do not have the space. This is not the most important thing. At the end of the day, we want to know the technical skills and competencies that you have and that you bring to a company. So personal summary. This is something that almost none of you will include on your resumes. If you have maybe about 7 years plus, or up to 20 years of experience in a certain field, then maybe you might want to talk about that. It kind of gives us an example to figure out how you're going to present yourself to employers, but also gives you the opportunity to talk about your journey to code. We have the example of this here, software developer with experience building both front end and back end of web apps as well as mobile applications, a former educator / nonprofit leader who has overseen large scale projects and supervised 50 plus team members, a self-starter, fast learner, enthusiastic individual who's eager to join a team of dedicated engineers to build software that will reach as many people across the globe. So again, going back to if you don't have a lot of experience, I would say 7 years minimally. It's maybe not important to even have a personal summary. This is not important. Even if you do have 7+ years of experience, don't make this priority because your project and your technologies and your experiences will be much more critical for your resume, because you can also put your personal summary on your LinkedIn. So now take the time to pause the video and add your education, including full stack, and add interests if you have the space. Final steps. Add everything to a personal folder. You should have start developing some type of organization system for all your resumes that you're going to make. You will have more than one throughout this journey. Again, the master, and then any redaction, and then a different resume for every job that you're going to apply to. Format it, prioritize for clarity, organize columns are best, but also check your calendar for the due dates for when we'll need to get those for you for career success. Thank you guys for listening in, and I hope you have a good luck making your resume.